Hello, today is April 15th, 2009. We're meeting today with Mr. Howard Orr at his home in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Howard, and thanks for participating in the project today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you're born, a little bit about your family.
I was born January 9th, 1923 at Bellvue, Colorado, where we lived till I was 11 years old. My family moved to Missouri for one summer, wanting to buy a property there. Neighbors predicted that we'd be back in school for the fall. We were, because my folks bid on a place and didn't make it. Well, we went back to school at LaPorte, and I went through the full 12 years there and got a scholarship to CSU, where I started out in chemistry and transferred to forestry. And then I knew I was going to be drafted in 1942, so I enlisted.
Well, let me interrupt you real quick then, Howard. Do you remember where you were and what you were thinking when you heard that Pearl had been bombed? Pearl Harbor?
I do not remember.
Okay. All right. And that's, but that was the start of, and that eventually you were probably going to get drafted?
Well, the draft was going, and
Yeah.
I knew that it was inevitable.
Okay.
Well, when I was enlisted in about November of 42, and I was called up in February of 43.
What branch of the service did you enlist in?
Air Corps.
Okay. And why did you choose to go to the Air Corps as opposed to the other branches?
Because I didn't want to fly on the ground, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I liked the idea of flying. I had been a sort of a fan of flying from the time I was a little kid.
Yeah. Continue?
Where was I?
You'd enlisted in the Air Corps due to the fact that you enjoyed flying.
I was called to duty and went to Denver, where we were put up at the Oxford Hotel for the physicals, and went from there to basic training at Jefferson Barracks in Missouri, near St. Louis. And as some people declare that was probably the hellhole of all basic training facilities.
Right? Did you feel that way?
It was in February, March, and it was cold and icy and windy and muddy, and it got so cold that the little coke stoves that we had, that we filled up with coke in the evening, they'd burn out, and it'd be so cold there'd be water frozen in the bucket sitting beside the stove in the morning. So I was glad to get out of there. And little story, they did a physical, checked your temperature and all before you left there, and I knew I was running a slight fever. So when they stuck a thermometer in my mouth, I sort of kept my mouth open and breathed on it in hopes that it would read all right. Well, apparently they hadn't shaken it down, or the guy that was had it before was normal, because I came up normal, and they shipped me to college training detachment, which was a kind of a new setup. The Air Corps was set up called College Training Detachment at the University of Missouri, where I spent 6 months, and we went to school, a variety of courses, and some pretty stiff physical training, and close order drill, and all that sort of thing.
How was that transition from civilian life into military life for you?
I don't remember it being particularly stressful.
Okay.
Actually, there was a lot about that I enjoyed. There was the schooling I enjoyed, and associations. We got association with, well, for one thing, I remember one time we got invited to be dates for the girls at Stevens College, which is a very pleasant experience. Well, from college training detachment, they shipped me to San Antonio, Texas for classification. There you either went to bombardier, navigator, or pilot. And I put in for pilot training, and I made it. From there I went to primary training in Southern California. It wasn't San Diego. Made it through pre-flight, then went to primary flight training at King City, or California, where we flew PT-22s, a little Ryan primary trainer. And the first well, no, I'd had 10 hours. Take it back. I had 10 hours in a Piper Cub while at Columbia, Missouri, at the College Training Detachment.
But had you flown prior to entering the service? Had you ever been up in an airplane?
I don't think I'd ever been in an airplane.
Oh, we done.
And I'll make reference to that Cub flying later.
Okay.
My instructor there was a John Lell, and he's one of the few that I remember, big red-headed Irishman. And it was interesting, the airplanes didn't have any radio, and you got permission to land with a green light. If you got a red light, you were supposed to go around. Well, that was my first sensation, too, of hanging on a seatbelt upside down in an open cockpit. Interesting experience. Lucky enough to be able to make some trips into San Francisco from there, and it was later that I got to Yosemite National Park from there. Well, from King City, I went to Merced, California for basic training, where we flew BT-13 basic trainers. I don't remember any particular problem with that. That was one of the few times in training that I experienced any real casualty in our outfit. One young man by the name of Archie Montgomery was spun in, bought the farm as they called it, and speculated that a microphone fell off and hit him in the head and knocked him out enough that he spun in. Anyway,
that'll be done.
From there, I went to advanced flight training at Luke Field at Phoenix, fighter training, and flew AT-6s, which was the primary advanced fighter trainer at the time. And really, I enjoyed the flying. I had a little tendency to get motion sickness. But, and one time, an instructor took me up with the idea of going to check me out to see if I really got airsick. Well, I rode in the back seat, and he did every acrobatic maneuver that airplane would do, I think. And at that particular time, it never bothered me a bit. I just sat back there and laughed at him. Well, I made it. I made it through that fighter training. One experience there that I remember that my dad took particular shine to was I was going back into the field one time, and I saw a plane coming up at me, and I knew that that was a Czech pilot. If he could get your number, you were listed as a casualty. Well, I saw him coming soon enough that I rolled away, and he didn't get my numbers. Then I went, well, we had some Cuban pilots, trainers there, and they gave me problems. We had wrecked airplanes piled up. The other thing about flying there, it was hot in the summertime. It was in July, most of it. It would get so hot you go out to the airplane and you put your feet on the rudder pedals and you could feel the heat like it was burning your feet right through the soles of your shoes. So if we were flying solo, we'd hurry up and get up to 10,000 feet where we could cool off a little bit. Went from there to, well, there's one other experience there that we did cross country, and one time was a low altitude cross country, and there was one guy who was out on a night flight, low altitude, and he was kind of flying right down one of the highways close to Phoenix, low enough that one wingtip clipped the windshield on an approaching car on the driver's side, and he got it back to the field, but needless to say, he was through flying. From then I went to gunnery training at Gila Bend. Went through both air-to-air and air-to-ground, and got expert ratings in both, and expected to go to a fighter transition. And I was on orders to go to Victorville for P-39 training, and then the orders were canceled. And about that time they didn't think they needed any more fighter pilots, so they shuffled me into a transport transition, flying big airplanes, transition training at Bergstrom Field at Austin, Texas, where I got...
Would that require going from single engine to multi-engine training? Okay.
And got 40 hours in C-47 in preparation for going to the bigger one, the C-46. Then after finished that training, we flew commercial to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I got a brand new C-46 airplane with 8 hours on it, and my flight crew, I remember their names, co-pilot was Sidney Wyndham, the radio man was John Lell, the crew chief was Audrey Neal. I think that's... And we got that airplane at Fort Wayne. We flew to Florida, to West Palm Beach, Florida, and we sat there a couple of 3 days, and in the process we went out deep sea fishing. Well, I'm susceptible enough to motion sickness that I got seasick, so it wasn't a very pleasant fishing trip. Well, when we got ready to take off from there, on an early morning flight, it was real cloudy, low clouds and fog, and the field told us to go ahead and take off and let us know how thick the clouds were. Well, we got up through them without any problem and broke out into the clear and headed for Puerto Rico, where we were supposed to stop and pick up mail to take on to Trinidad. But I was feeling kind of rotten when we got to Puerto Rico, to San Juan in Puerto Rico. And I went to the flight surgeon. He stuck me in the hospital with tonsillitis for a couple of days. My crew really got a blast during that time. The only thing I remember really about that was my co-pilot and I walking down to the beach there somewhere, and picked up some big coconut, chopped them open, and that meat and that milk and the coconut was pretty good.
Oh boy.
Well, because we stopped there, we did pick up the mail. They wouldn't let us go to Trinidad, so we flew from... They sent the mail on to Trinidad with some other airplane. We went on to Georgetown in British Guiana. Flew down along the coast of South America, across the mouth of the Amazon, I don't know how much of this kind of stuff.
Oh, sure. Oh, this is fascinating.
Across the mouth of the Amazon, we were close enough inshore we could see the brown water of the Amazon fading into the clear blue of the ocean. Flew on down to Natal, Brazil, and from there we headed for Ascension Island, a little speck out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that's where Napoleon was exiled. That was they said about Ascension Island, if you miss Ascension, your wife will get a pension, because there's nothing out there beyond there for a long, long ways. From there, we flew to Roberts Field in Africa, to Dakar, to Marrakesh in Morocco, to Tunis, to Cairo, where we landed, and well, I did take the airplane a couple of turns around the Sphinx and the pyramids, so we got a good look at those from the air.
Wow.
Then they kept us there for 2 or 3 days because of sandstorms out to the east. And we had plenty of time to go into Cairo. And we had plenty of time to go to see the Sphinx and the pyramids on the ground, but we didn't do it. We had been on the go for long enough that we were all dirty laundry, and we didn't feel like going out too much. Well, we went then, flew across Israel, across the Holy Land to Abadan in Iran. And it was a blacktop runway and very, very hot. And when we touched down, we slowed down faster, much quicker than you usually would. So I opened the window on the left side. I looked out, and we were sinking about 3 or 4 inches into blacktop asphalt.
Wow.
It was that hot.
Oh, man.
Then we flew from there down the Persian Gulf, by the Straits of Hormuz, and along Pakistan to Karachi, where we landed. And we were warned there to watch for crows. There were huge flocks of crows around there, and they were death to an airplane if you collided. From Karachi, we went on to where's the Taj Mahal?
Agra?
Agra, where we had the pleasure of visiting the Taj Mahal.
Wow. Now, were you? I'm sorry to interrupt your story and let you continue. Were you flying in a formation, or were you doing this all solo?
Single.
Okay.
And we had 2 crews, C-47 crews, as passengers. It's kind of interesting experience. In Puerto Rico, the crew didn't show up soon enough for us to get off to pick up the mail to take to Trinidad, and I had the pleasure of really chewing out the captain pilot of one of those other crews. He didn't like it much, but he had to take it. Well, from Agra, we flew cargo to Calcutta, Barakpur airfield, I think it was. And then back to Agra, and they took our airplane away from us. Never flew it again. I saw it later, but never flew the same airplane again. Then I don't remember how, I suppose by ATC, flew to Myitkyina, Burma, where I was stationed the rest of the time I was flying the Hump. It was kind of a primitive field, and it hadn't been out of Japanese hands but for a few months. General Tunner, who's the boss of the Hump airlift, had flown in there only a few months before we got there. We flew out of there east over the Hump to Kunming or Luliang, were the 2 main fields that we flew into.
Now, to interrupt you, for those that will watch this tape, the Hump is flying over the Himalayas.
Right.
Okay.
We had to fly south from Myitkyina in order to gain altitude, be able to climb over the hump. And sometimes it was a little rough.
Well, I understand. I mean, it was a very dangerous route with the downdrafts and such. From what I understand, a lot of planes were lost.
They called it Tin Can Alley because there were a lot of planes that went down. But I never experienced any particular trouble. I did experience one time on the way the downdraft, drowned flowing air from coming down off the Himalayas that we just couldn't climb. I mean, so the engine started to heat up, so we turned around and went back to home base. Well, the operations people didn't much like it, but they had to take it. And once in a while, we'd get caught in updrafts or downdrafts that would take us up like a couple of thousand feet. You just couldn't stop it. I don't remember being particularly scared about it. It was just something you experienced. One of the first times I went into Luliang in China was dense clouds and rain, and we flew our pattern, and we broke out of clouds about 200 feet above the ground on the downwind leg. I don't remember if that was design or whether we knew that's what we were doing. Anyway, it worked out fine. We had, I think it was Luliang also, that we were coming into land, and there were Chinese coolies working on the runway. Well, they wouldn't get out of the way. So we had to give her the gun and go around. Well, the next time they disappeared, so we were able to land. But I asked the operations people, what would happen if I ran over some Chinese there? I said, probably if you did that, they wouldn't do anything. But if you wrecked an airplane, they'd probably court-martial you, trying to avoid them. I had no real problems flying the hump. Remember one time out of Luliang, it was where the B-29 was set up for B-29s. It had about a 10,000-foot runway. And I remember one time, having been a fighter pilot, I wanted to do a little maneuvering, so I just lifted it off the runway, pulled up the gear, and kept it down low and to pick up as much speed as I could down to the end of the runway, and did a nice chandelle off to the left like a fighter pilot would have done. So I had some fun flying there. Let's see. It was about one of the highlights of my hump flying that I'll never forget. I know where I was the night of August 6th, after the same day the atom bomb was dropped.
Okay.
I was at 20,000 feet in the middle of the night on the way back from Kunming to Myitkyina, and we had to call in for a radio check. Well, there was so much confusion, screaming and shouting that we never were able to get it, because I guess they knew that the war was probably over. So that was kind of a highlight. I clearly remember that.
And then you, of course, got word once you did finally land, and
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we did some flying there, kept flying. Then we, the Japanese capitulated in September, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we transferred from Myitkyina to Shanghai, Kangwon Air Base. And we flew Chinese troops, their ammunition, their guns, a lot of fuel, gasoline. I remember one time we did from Myitkyina, came back to Myitkyina for just a minute. We had to pick up Chinese troops at Lashio, was where the Flying Tigers flew out of, and they didn't have radio facilities there, strangely enough. And it was a very cloudy day, so we had to spiral down through a big opening in the clouds and got down, and it was raining and really a muddy mess. And I was riding the right seat that time. The Captain Firth was in the left seat, was the pilot. We got our Chinese troops loaded and took out from there, and I don't know, delivered them somewhere in China, I don't remember. Well, back to Shanghai. From there we flew a lot of Chinese troops from South China up towards Peiping, nationalist Chinese troops that were being set up to confront the communist Chinese. And we were accused of abetting the nationalist cause, which I guess we were. I guess I was promoted to first lieutenant about that time, and I was assigned as a check pilot for a B-25, which the squadron got a hold of that some general had probably no longer needed, bright silver like that one up there, only that's olive drab. I never got to fly it though. They shipped me out before I got to fly it. We saw a Zero fighter. There were Zero fighters around there, of course, and they were great at copying American designs. They had transport sitting there, almost exact copies of C-47s or DC-3s. We managed to get a hold of a Chinese truck or two and managed to get them running and had fun cavorting around the airbase. Well, we got through, well, one interesting thing, I don't know, flying from, we a lot of times flew at night, and I remember one time our airplane took off and we heard reports from them that they had a kerchunk when they were going down the runway without lights on. They could see the runway lights. Mm-hmm. And come to find out that they had put away a number of Chinese who were superstitious enough to think that if they ran in the front of one of those things, they could separate the evil spirits from themselves. So that wasn't, and I read about that in General Tunner's description of his overseeing of the Hump flying, because he also worked on the flying in eastern China, the eastern China. Well, from Changwon, they shipped me out in December on a troop transport ship, the General Hugh L. Scott, which is supposed to have, I think, about a 12,000-ton displacement. They were supposed to put the officers on the A deck, but they had so many of them that they shuffled us lesser officers down to like C deck. That was about 3 decks down, and one night apparently something went wrong. They needed to adjust something about the engines, and woke up in the middle of the night and the lights were all out. No lights, and you can imagine how dark it would be.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Down in a place like that. Well, the ship got on the trough and was rolling enough that all the baggage ended up against the bulkhead. All of and there were, bunks, double-deck bunks all over the place, and so we had fun trying to sort that out. Well, it was rough enough a time or two that they couldn't serve hot meals, so they served like apples and sandwiches. That's all they could keep on the tables. But we made it to Seattle, where.
How did you do personally there? Did you get seasick at all? How was that crossing for you?
I remember going out of Shanghai, across the Sea of Japan. Everything was pretty nice and smooth, and I enjoyed standing at the rail and watching the gulls. And then we got out to where it was a little rougher, and I started to get sick. I stood there at the rail watching the white caps for so long, and then I started to feeling sick enough. I went down and laid in my bunk for a whole day. But then after that, it didn't bother me at all.
Is that right? Huh.
we crossed the international date line at a time when, so we wound up with two December 25th, two Christmases that year. Got into Seattle, and we sat there for a while till they decided to what they were going to do with us. And I remember one bad experience there. I went to mess hall with some of my buddies and hung my flight jacket with the flag on the back and the emblems and all that, and somebody stole it.
Oh boy.
And that was sort of a sore spot. Well,
Sure.
I guess went by rail, had to be by rail from there to Fort Logan in Denver, where they were kind enough to do a tonsillectomy for me before they separated, for my separation. So I separated from the service in February of '46, and promptly went back to enroll in CSU in forestry, and worked at the Fraser Experimental Forest that summer, and was courting. And Florence Mahan and I were married in September of '46. Well, I finished got my bachelor's degree, and it was nice enough. I got a whole quarter's credit for my time in the service, and for my 6 months at the University of Missouri.
Okay.
Got my bachelor's degree in forestry and continued and got my master's degree, and graduated with a master's in '47. Well, in '48, I got a job with the Intermountain Forest and Range Experiment Station in Utah, and spent 8 years working for them at Ephraim, right in the geographical center of the state of Utah, and as a research hydrologist and project leader. And we had our 3 children while we were there in Ephraim, and from there we moved to a new project set up by the Rocky Mountain Station at Rapid City in South Dakota, the Black Hills, where I spent 22 years, I think it is, as a project leader and research hydrologist for the Rocky Mountain Station. Then we decided, well, I retired then in 1978, in December 1978. We stayed there until, well, while there in Rapid City, in 1972 we experienced a sort of a flood disaster. When we moved to Rapid City and we were looking for a place to buy a lot and build a house, I checked the maps to make sure that we were out of the floodplain.
Yeah.
But I didn't get far enough, because we had a storm there in June of 1972 that laid down like 17 inches of rain overnight. We measured 17 inches in the stock tank the next several days. And the Rapid Creek flooded, and it built up a neck against the chain link fence by a nearby school, Meadowbrook School. And when the pressure built up, it pushed the fence over and headed right towards our house. And it took out the windows on the south side of our house. It just blew them in, filled up the basement, and pushed the windows out on the other side.
Were you guys at home, or had you evacuated?
Well, we had to come down to Fort Collins that day.
Oh boy.
Well, our son called us and said that things were amiss, and so we headed right back the next morning. Well, I spent 2 weeks cleaning things up, my son and I, and putting things back together, and then we decided, well, we'd like to buy a house out of town where we're on a hill where we know we wouldn't be bothered with the flood. So we sold that house and bought a lot out southwest Rapid City, and we built a house which our son designed. He was a residential architect at Trinity University in San Antonio. We built the house, and we lived in that house for, from 1974 to 86. It's a very, very pleasant place to live.
Hmm.
And then we decided, well, it was getting too much for us, so we sold that and bought a townhouse in Northwest Rapid, where we lived for 5 years. To 1991, we moved here to Fort Collins, and where we've been ever since. We bought this place and in 91, and here we are in 2009.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back and just kind of pepper you with some questions of this story that you just told.
That's fine.
Let's start out with, here's a boy, or not boy, a person that grew up in LaPorte, Colorado, Bellvue area. Many like your generation probably didn't travel far. I know you went out to Missouri in that trip, but really didn't travel a whole lot, kind of stayed close to home. Here you are, you went completely around the world to some incredibly exotic locations. What was that like from your to experience that?
I didn't think a whole lot about it at
Is
the
that
time.
right?
I don't think. One thing I didn't say about flying in China, I did take the airplane around the one end of the Great Wall of China, so we got to see that too.
Huh.
But I remember one of the things that impressed me was when I first when we first having physicals at Oxford Hotel in Denver when I enlisted. Everybody was there had to take off their clothes and stand naked in queue for physical exams. That was a little bit startling for somebody that
Sure.
had never been exposed to anything like that. As far as for generally the flying, I enjoy. I mean, I remember with pleasure about all of my flying, including gunnery training. I'm kind of glad I never had to shoot at anybody from
or be shot at.
But and one gentleman talking about this, he said, "You're probably lucky. You probably wouldn't be alive if you'd gone on into fighters."
Right.
But I wanted to fly a P-51, like that one up there. But I never got into that.
Was that about the time you went from fighter to a large airplane? What was the time frame roughly? Was it after like the Mariana shoot, where Turkey shoot, where there wasn't need for? We pretty much decimated both the German and the Japanese air forces, and there wasn't that much need now for fighters, or what?
There wasn't that much need for fighters anymore.
Yeah.
Just a side note, AT-6 was built by North American Aviation. Well, the P-51 also. And a buddy of mine, who we were pretty much paralleled our service time all the way through for 3 years, sent me a note one time, a magazine article about about the AT-6. And whoever wrote this article said that they were tough to fly. Oh, I never knew it. I didn't know it. We just flew the things.
Yeah.
Well, somebody said, well, the P-51 was easier to fly than the T-6. and that they should have had the P-51 as a as a prelude to the AT-6. This friend of mine, by the way, I met on, name is Julian Omerberg. I met in Denver when we first got to Denver, and he and I were together at Jefferson Barracks at University of Missouri at pre-flight. We sort of separated ways there for a while, but we ended up together again in Burma.
Is that right? Huh.
We stayed together. We tootled around Shanghai a lot together, and so we stayed as friends for all these years.
I'll be darned. Huh. What was it like there? You said the air base in Burma was pretty primitive. What were conditions like there as far as just day-to-day living in your regards, as far as sleeping conditions, the food, the weather? How did that?
It was hot and humid, and of course, we were tent huts, and we had to sleep with mosquito net under mosquito netting, and it was humid and hot enough that you'd perspire enough to practically soak up a cotton mattress at night. We had houseboys. I mean, ours happened to be a young man from an East Indian. And he'd take our mattresses out every day to air them out in order for us to be able to tolerate them. I remember we paid him $5 a month. We wanted to pay him more, but he refused to take it because he said that was the going pay, and if he accepted more than that, he would be looked down. I mean, he would be in trouble from all the other houseboys. The mosquitoes were. We'd go to an outdoor theater, and to sit and try to watch a movie was a bit of a problem. I mean, you could wear thick wool socks. Mosquitoes were bad enough that they'd get you right through your socks.
Wow.
And we took Atibanol, of course, all the time.
Did you ever succumb to any sort of jungle
No.
disease? Okay. Yeah. How about the food and such?
I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
So it must not have been too bad.
Well, with the miserable weather, the humidity and such, do you feel like you were getting enough sleep? I mean, you had to be pretty alert to fly. I mean,
well, it seemed to be that they had a thing for getting me up in the middle of the night. We always took off after midnight sometime in order to get to China in the daylight to unload and get back in the daylight. So I did a lot of taking off at night.
That's a long day.
I don't remember that it particularly
Yeah.
bothered me. At one time, they were being pushed to see what squadron could get the most tonnage over the hump in one 24-hour period. Well, that's when General Tunner was running the show. So I remember making two round trip flights in one day during that time.
What would a normal round trip take? I mean, I guess you had time on the ground to unload and such, but what would a normal? I got an average round trip.
8 hours.
Is that right? Yeah.
At least 8 hours.
Yeah. And I guess you're talking about a competition with the squadrons. I guess it's a good time to grab your information. What squadron were you in? And
I lost all of my papers in that '72 flood, so I can't tell you. But in this book, it tells you what one troop carrier. I was in troop carrier. I don't remember what squadron or what, and also designated at one time as combat cargo. I don't know which was when.
Okay. What did it ever play on your mind? You said going over the hump was called Tin Pan Alley because there's so many planes going down. Did it ever play in your mind? Ever worry about? Hey, I'm running a pretty dangerous. This isn't a milk run. This is a pretty dangerous route.
never struck me that way.
Is that right? Yeah.
We only had one casualty that I know of during the time that the months that I flew that route. We had one airplane that took off and was supposed to land at an intermediate field about halfway to China, and it was a short field and it was deep in the mountains. And this airplane went in and he overshot, and he knew he had to go around, and he pulled up too sharp and he stalled out and crashed and burned. And my radio operator at the time was there at that field, and he saw this plane burning, and he knew that there was somebody live that was thrown clear of it, because he saw one, the word is that they saw one man trapped under the wing, and they couldn't get near him. He knew he was alive because his arms were waving. So they just had to stand there and watch him burn up.
Oh boy, wow.
And this radio operator swore he'd never fly again after that. I don't know that he did. He flew back to Missional, I guess, had to, but after he saw that, he wasn't ever going to fly again.
Now, did you stay with the same crew that you went to Burma with, or?
I had the same crew all the way to Agra.
Well, Agra, okay.
And then from then on, I flew different co-pilots. So I never had the same airplane. I never had the same people on a crew.
Huh.
And I saw the airplane that I took overseas, I saw at Luliang one time, sitting kind of forlornly by a taxiway. Somebody apparently had ground looped it, and it was just sitting there. And I never knew what happened to it. Never found out.
Was there any reason they broke up the crews like that? You never flew with the same crew, or?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
You just flew an airplane when it was loaded. I mean, the next one that was loaded, you flew it out.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Marrakesh in Morocco was a sort of a transition training for C-46s. And they had a bunch of them in there when we flew in there and out of there. Well, later they transferred a bunch of those to India, Burma. And we got a bunch of those in, and I seemed like I got the chore of flying those things on their initial flight over the Hump. Well, I remember one time we were some part of the way over, and we saw a spinner on one of the engines was vibrating. Well, we didn't know whether the prop was coming loose or... We got on in, watched it carefully, and I told everybody to get away. They have the fuselage marked, lines on it, the line where the prop blades would come through through the fuselage if the prop broke off. I warned everybody to get away from there, and we went on into our destination, and it turned out it was only a loose spinner cover. Fortunately, it wasn't a bad...
oh, boy. Huh.
I only had one really sort of scary. On a flight back into Missional from China one time, hydraulic system gave out. Well, we had to crank the gear down, and
Hand crank it?
hand crank it down. I landed the thing, and I had to be easy. I knew we had little brakes left, but not very much. We got down the runway and just enough for me to stop it with the brakes and turn off on a taxiway, and stopped it right there, and I let it set. I told them to come and get the airplane when I was through with it. And the back of that airplane was absolutely just covered with hydraulic fluid. That was really the only one other time flying. We were coming back from China to Burma, and it was a very high, dense cloud cover. I don't know how many airplanes, but there were a bunch of airplanes stacked up at 500-foot intervals. We were supposed to fly so long a time on a certain bearing, and turn around and fly in the same bearing on the reverse course until the planes let down one after another, but you couldn't see anything, and you were stacked to 500-foot intervals, and you hoped everybody had the proper altimeter settings.
Oh, boy.
But we made it all right.
How many flights do you think you made over the hump, roughly? Do you have a rough idea how many times you think you flew?
I don't know. I expect 100 at least.
Wow. How was it being over there as far as communication back home, mail and such? Was that pretty reliable? Were you able to get mail back and forth, or did you even write home much? Or
I wrote a lot. That's part of that 100 shoebox full of letters that my folks kept. I think the mail was fairly reliable.
Yeah, yeah. How about just general word about what was going on in the world? Were you getting news and such, like the death
I
of
remember reading
FDR
Stars and Stripes and that sort of thing, but I don't remember a whole lot about the news we were getting.
yeah, and you'd heard about the atom bomb, of course, roughly through the radio, and then when you finally landed and got the news, what was that feeling of? Did you feel, oh, the war's over, I've made it? Was there a celebration once you got down?
We got down that it was still dark when we got in. And of course there was whooping and hollering and celebration, and we hadn't had anything to eat for a long time. And we wanted to go to the mess hall and get something to eat. Well, I'm not sure that there was anybody at the time sober enough to even fry us an egg. So there was, but I don't remember a lot of concern about or hearing about other action going on. There must have been, but I
Yeah.
don't.
Could you, once you had heard about the bomb, could you put your arms around this thing as to what the size of this thing and what it had done? Could you even grasp or understand that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah,
I've read enough about the Enola Gay and the bomb to know what it did, but it was quite an operation.
yeah, yeah. How about throughout the years? Have you kept in touch with anybody? Anybody's through your war time? Go to any reunions, anything like that?
No, no, I haven't. I pretty much lost track of everybody that I did service with, except this one exception of Julian Olmenberg, who we paralleled our service time for 3 years.
In all your travels and service, did you ever run into anybody else from home or anybody else you knew anywhere along the way?
No,
No.
never did.
Yeah, yeah. How about after you got out of the service through the years? Did you ever have a chance to go back to any of the bases you served at or any of the destinations that you flew throughout the world?
Never have.
No. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll start to wind down this interview, Howard. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, or any stories that got left out as you were telling your story that we want to talk about now, so we don't doesn't get missed on the tape at all?
Back to that business of my flying, getting the 10 hours of flying in a
That's right.
Piper Cub.
We wanted to talk about it. You bet.
College
Yeah.
training detachment. Those are things that are pretty flimsy kites, only weigh about 750 pounds. My instructor there, well, they weren't always in the best of shape either. I remember this one time that the brakes weren't working, so he just opened the door and put his foot out on the wheel.
Is that right? Oh, jeez.
to brake the thing. Well, he didn't have much hopes for me making it when I got up.
Really?
From that.
Did he ever say why?
I don't remember that he did.
Yeah.
I thought later, after I got through fighter training and all the acrobatics and gunnery, I would have liked to have gone back there and taken him for a ride. Might have shown him a thing or two.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever keep up with flying after you got out of the service? And you decided to get a private license or anything?
I came out with a commercial license, both single and multi-engine land, but I never used it.
Is that right? Yeah.
I did use it. I did use it enough to take my wife for a ride in a Luscombe Silver out here at Crispin Field, Fort Collins, and also a sister of mine. But that's the only flying on my own that I've done since I got out of the service.
Now, did you know Florence before you went off to the service, or is that
No.
You met her afterwards? Okay.
Met her afterwards.
Okay.
She was a classmate of my younger sister. And we met in early soon after I got out of the service, and we were married in September.
Hmm. I'll be darned. Well, like I said, we'll wind this down. One question I always like to ask towards the end of the interview is, how do you think that period of time played into your life, affected your life, changed your life, or did it? Or was it just simply just a chapter in your life?
It changed me. I think I had a healthier view of the life in general, people's differences, and how to cope with people's differences, all kinds. I did. I did things that I enjoyed. I always sang in church choirs, or in school and church choirs and that sort of thing. And I still sing in the Harmonettes, which is a local group of oldsters that range from about 70 to 99 years old.
Huh.
And I enjoy that very much. It's a pretty important part of my life right now.
Was there any opportunity through your service to sing and all, or be musically?
No, no,
Okay,
I
so
wasn't
it kind of was put on hold while.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. During the 8 years I was over in Utah, I didn't have that opportunity either. But aside from those times, I've been in music about all my life.
Is that right? Well, like I said, we'll close down this interview. Is there any sort of statement, final statement you'd like to make for those that will watch this to close off this interview, or once again, or not?
I don't think there is.
Okay.
I've always wondered about. Well, I have people that I did serve with that I've wondered what happened to them, and I've never been able to find out. I've tried people on the internet to find names and addresses, and I just haven't been able to do it.
Hmm.
But I don't have any general feeling. I do have a feeling about flying. You know, I tell people about flying that what we flew in the 1940s compared to modern day airplanes is about like comparing the Model T with a modern automobile. I mean, there's virtually no difference.
Well, that's why I find kind of fascinating, and particularly you said when you were crossing the Atlantic and Essentia Island.
Yeah.
Without modern technology, there's a good chance you couldn't find that. I mean, it must have been a hell of a lot harder to find.
We had an ATC navigator they gave us for that period, and he took a star shot somewhere in the dark over the Atlantic. We took off in the middle of the night there to get there in the daytime. Well, he told us we were 50 miles off course. Well, I've been listening to I had a radio compass and the navigation bands, the radio beacons. So I knew we were not off course. Well, fortunately we're not. We came right in, bang on our destination.
Wow.
In bright daylight. That was it's a small island, just a pile of volcanic ash, really. And you come in right over a cliff. I mean, it's being down to the water. And that's always tricky, flying over water and then right onto land above a cliff. But that was an interesting place. We had plenty of time there, and we remember going down to the beach, it was just piles of volcanic rock. and the surf rolling in, and this surf was full of some kind of fish. I never knew what kind of fish it was, but they gave us a line and hooks, and you could throw a hook out there and you could catch a fish on a bare hook.
Huh.
So then we'd cut the fish up and use it as bait, and you could catch fish as fast as you could drag them in. I never knew what kind they were.
Huh. Wow.
I can remember the white breakers rolling in there and seeing through those breakers just full of fish.
Huh.
Ascension Island is still there, as they have a nice runway, I guess. I look it up on Google World, and I've looked at it that way. But Miss Ascension and your wife gets a pension.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Howard, if there isn't anything else we want to talk about, we'll shut her down. Is there anything?
Oh, there's one thing about flying.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You didn't finish your thoughts there.
Flying from Ascension to Roberts Field in North Africa, we could see a haze of brown haze above us. We didn't know what it was. And I took the airplane up a couple of thousand feet to see if we could get above it. Well, I don't know, it's just a brown haze. I don't know what it's from, but we never did get above it. Took us about 9 hours, I think, from Ascension to Roberts Field in North Africa.
Yeah, there's a thought between technology then and technology now. I mean, yeah, I mean,
night to day.
How you combine? I mean, total time combining to get from the States to Burma. You ever tallied up how many hours that took you to combine flying?
A lot of hours.
Yeah.
Enough hours and enough time that we used up all our clean laundry and.
Oh, geez.
For the most part, I have nothing but really pleasant memories about flying. We had a few tense moments, but nothing that really stuck with me as being really, really dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good.
And I always kind of wondered why I didn't go for commercial flying, except I'd had that tendency to get airsick, unless I was on the controls. And I never did when I was on the controls, but otherwise I could get airsick.
Is that right? Huh.
As well as seasick.
Yeah.
Motion sickness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Howard, I want to thank you for sitting down to tell your story today. More importantly, though, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.